Hello, children. We all must be familiar with this kind of sari. Yes, we have seen our mothers wearing these beautiful saris on any kind of special occasion. But do you know of what material this kind of saris are made up of? Yes, you are right. These type of saris are made up of silk and are known as silk saris. Now, tell me one thing. Where do we get the silk from? Think. Is it from an animal or some kind of plants? Yes, very good. You have guessed it right. It is from animals. Do you know the name of the animal? It is often from tiny worm-like structures called silkworms. Now you must be wondering, how do we get silk from such tiny creatures? For that, first of all, we have to know some basics. Let us see then one by one. So today we will discuss about at first the life cycle of silkworms. Then we will move into what is silk, and then we will discuss the different types of silk moths, and finally we will discuss how to rear the silkworms in order to obtain silk fibers. Let us begin with the life cycle of the silkworms. Take out your copy and write down all the important points we will be discussing today. Silk moths usually prefer the leaves of mulberry trees in order to lay their eggs. So, the female moth flies to the mulberry leaves and lays eggs on them. The eggs are mostly the size of small dots, and a female moth lays more than 350 eggs at a time. So the first stage is the egg stage. Now, the eggs after few days hatch out into hairy larvae, and in this stage the growth occurs. They feed on the mulberry leaves and consume a large amount of these leaves for around 30 days before going to the next stage. And do you know, this stage has a scientific name too, which is called as instar. So, what is instar? Instar is the phase between two periods of molting in the development of insect larvae. So, in this case, we can say that the silkworm larva grows into first instar, then into second instar, consecutively to the third instar, and so on till they feed themselves enough. So, the second stage is the larval stage. Now, when the larva has consumed enough amount of leaves, they enter to the next stage, and it is known as resting phase. In this phase, the larva spins the fibers in the shape of a 8 and cover themselves. These filaments harden on exposure to air and forms the cocoon. Do you know, this cocoon is the main interest to us. Why? Because from these only we get the silk threads. Once the cocoon is completed, the larva inside it sleeps for about 15 to 20 days, and this stage is called the pupal stage. In this stage, the pupa remains inactive and does not move, and starts developing the organs for the adult moth. And this process of active changing is called metamorphosis. After the complete development inside the cocoon, the adult stage is reached. Then the adult moth breaks the cocoon and fly away. So, let us now summarize the complete life cycle once more. First is the egg stage. From the eggs, we get the larvae, in which the larvae passes through several instars. Now, from the larval stage, it enters the resting phase, where it forms the cocoon. And after few days, the larva stops moving and starts developing the organs, which is known as the pupal stage. And finally, the pupa develops into an adult moth and comes out of the cocoon. Now, let us discuss what is silk. Silk is a kind of natural fibers which is obtained from the cocoons of the silkworms, which are processed into silk fibers. Let me tell you one interesting thing. Silk fibers are so strong that they are compared to steel threads. So interesting, isn't it? Now, let us talk about the different types of silk moths which produces different types of silk fibers. First one is the mulberry silk moth. Second, tussar silk moth. Third one is the muga silk moth. And the fourth is the airy silk moth. But among the silk moths, the most common type of silk moth is the mulberry silk moth, and from their cocoons, silk fibers which are obtained are dyed into beautiful and colorful silk fibers. So, we have discussed about the life cycle of the silkworms, and also we have seen the different types of silk moth. Now, let us have a quick glance to the rearing of silkworms. Thus, the process by which the silkworms are reared to obtain silk is known as sericulture. At first, the healthiest moths are selected to breed and lay the eggs. Then, once the eggs are laid, larvae emerge out and feeds vigorously on the mulberry leaves for 20 to 25 days. Then, when the larvae is about 35 days old, it starts spinning cocoon around itself and takes about 3 to 7 days to complete and turn into pupa. Now, in the next step, the pupae are killed inside the cocoons by dipping them in hot water and loosens the filament thereby. Then, one end of the silk thread is passed through the wheel of the machine for reeling the filament. Finally, the single filament is washed, dried, and twisted to form a silk yarn. In this way, the fibers of the silkworms are converted into silk fabric. But let me tell you one thing. Today, silk manufacturing is very popular in India, but it was discovered in some other country. Let us now go through the discovery of silk. According to an old Chinese legend, the Emperor Wang Ti asked the Empress Shi Longqi to find out the reason behind the damage of mulberry leaves in their garden. Even the Empress saw the same thing and also saw many spinning cocoons around the mulberry trees. One day, a cocoon fell accidentally into her cup of tea and saw tangled delicate threads getting separated from the cocoon. In this way, silk industry started in China and kept its secret for about 100 years. Later on, many traders and travelers introduced silk to different other countries, and the route they traveled is still named as Silk Route. So, let us see what have we learned so far. First, silk comes from silkworms. Silkworms are caterpillars of silk moth. During their life cycle, the larvae spin cocoons of silk fibers. Silk fibers from cocoons are taken out and reeled into silk threads. Weavers weave silk threads into silk cloth. Okay, so now you must be wondering, what is the maximum length of continuous silk thread that can be obtained from a cocoon? Very interesting question. I will definitely clear your doubt. From one cocoon, a single thread of continuous raw silk can be obtained, with its length varying from 300 to 900 meters, which is equal to 1000 to 3000 feet. Haha, you must be enjoying this. I will tell you another interesting fact, that in order to make a single tie, it takes 110 silkworm cocoons. So children, now find some more interesting facts about silkworms and silk and write them down in your copy. See you again. Till then, stay home, stay safe.